What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Filip Latocha, and today we are talking about Chicago Marathon 2022 as we are exactly 4 months away from race day. And I'm just going to kind of talk about a little bit of the training that's been going on in addition to some other life things that are currently factoring into the race, the build up, and all of the sorts of things that kind of roll around with it. So before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed, watching the content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Let's talk about marathon running. So at this point in time, I have run 8 marathons in my life, 2 of which are unofficial and 6 which have been the Chicago Marathon in a span of years between 2016 and 2021. So essentially my trend analysis kind of looked something like this, where in 2016 I ran like a 430 something, 2017 I ran it in like 407, 2018, which was arguably my favorite year for it, was like 326 or something like that. And then 2019, my best year, was a 310. And the trend at this point should kind of tell you that, yeah, we're going to be building into a Boston qualifier at this point in time. So let's just see it happen. So 2020, of course, was kind of a skip because of obvious reasons. 2021, I ran a 327. So my trend analysis went from going faster and faster to dropping back to my 2018 time. Even with all the technology considered of better running shoes and things like that, I fell short and ran my 3rd fastest marathon time. So after that marathon, I obviously did get injured, and I definitely took a step back from running the marathon in this particular case, and just reassessed the whole thing, because I really do want to run a Boston qualifier. I do want to run the Boston Marathon, and I think I have a 240, a 230 in me somewhere, but everything needs to be aligned correctly, and I really need to dedicate more time to the sport than I'm dedicating right now. So there's obviously a lot of life factors involved with this, but like at no point am I saying, oh yeah, I should just, quit my full-time job or something like that. I think the full-time job is like complementary to my training and is like a necessity in order for this to work properly, but I digress. The point here is that I thought for sure in 2021 my marathon result could break a sub 3 based on some of the results I saw leading up to and how I was feeling, but I messed up a lot of things in the process. One of those, of course, was like my taper leading into the Chicago Marathon. Like the entire week before, I put on way too much mileage, I was running too fast. It was noticeable, and like people on Strava were telling me like, hey Phil, slow down, like you need to take time off, you need to feel like jittery on marathon day that you're ready to run, and not like kind of tired, kind of exhausted in a sense. So I messed up the taper because I was too excited for the marathon. That was the first thing. And that's, in the terms of like internal and external lotus, that's like an internal lotus, right? I was just excited. I messed that up myself. An external lotus factor to consider was probably the weather. And I think a lot of people agree that the weather during the 2021 Chicago Marathon was like really warm, it was muggy, and it sucked. It's not like generic Chicago Marathon running weather where it's like in the 40s, maybe even the 30s, kind of sunny, sometimes not, and you basically are just running through the cold in like clothes that you'd wear during like 70, 80 degree weather. So this was the case in 2019 where it was super cold and I was like running with a fleece on, but I should have just chosen, like I should have opted out from running in the fleece and then having just like my tank top and like my arm sleeves, because I would have been able to store my gels in the arm sleeves, one, and then I would have just been able to stay cool for the majority of the race, as I was probably running at that point like maybe sub 6 pace for some reason, and then I blew up and then I finished in a 310. Go figure, right? Me of all people? No, it would never happen to anyone else. Could it possibly? Other things to factor in. The racing schedule, obviously after 2020 has changed drastically. There was like a set pattern for racing that I would do from like, in June and July I was training for a half marathon, and then August was like the Chicago Triathlon, and then September was like the big marathon training block window to like really make it, and then October was race day. With 2020, it kind of changed, obviously. There was just no marathon to race for, obviously, but when I went to Florida and I was racing there, I saw some good results from some of my shorter distance training where I was able to win not one, but two 5Ks, and then I was able to place second during like a 10K. So going from the 2021 into the 2022 season, racing was starting to open up again, but I was still experiencing a little bit of injuries and whatnot, particularly with the peroneal tendon, which kind of leads into a much larger question of like training in carbon plate shoes, which I was doing for a lot of the time, but also wasn't. So I was kind of shifting in and out. And at this point in time, like, I was pretty much using carbon plate shoes for at least 60 to 70% of my running. And then whenever I wanted to like review something for this channel, or I wanted like an easy recovery pace shoe, I was running in a non-carbon plate shoe, which I arguably probably should have been doing more often. But the point here is the technology that we're using with training. I have to put more emphasis on what I'm going to be using on my more daily runs, which one I'm willing to invest in more. Are the carbon plate shoes the right move? And if so, what kind of recovery do I need to keep in plan here? So that's something also worth keeping in mind as I'm rolling into this training block. So these are, of course, things I've been pondering, but now let's get into like the good stuff as we're like almost 7 minutes into this video. So the question you might be asking yourself now is, what am I doing different this year that I wasn't doing last year? And here are some of the things that I'm starting to really ramp up. So one, of course, is that I officially have a running coach. I've never had one in my life before. I never thought I needed one. But this time I want one as a checks and balances system for myself. And I also want one also for himself so he can like kind of train himself into training more marathon runners rather than like track and field athletes. So it's going to work good for both ways. And like marathon training in a way, the formula is kind of figured out. It's kind of set. You just make some slight variations here and there to obviously emphasize a better training experience or a better race experience overall. But this is just going to be something good for the practice for both of us. I don't think he wants himself named here yet. If he does, he'll just sound off in the comments and say something like, keep up the good work, Phil. I don't know, something along those lines. The second thing that's different now is going to be my race block leading into the Chicago Marathon. So last year, the race that I did before the Chicago Marathon was the Chicago Triathlon, and then I had training leading up to it and whatnot, and that was fine and all, but I'm actually doing something a little bit more, I guess, dangerous to an extent, or you know, in this terminology sense. I have like 3 races leading up into the Chicago Marathon that are almost like 2-3 weeks away from the race day. So first, I have the Chicago Triathlon, which is like August 28th. That's kind of close, but not really. It's maybe like 5-6 weeks from the race day. Then I have a local race. It's the Crystal Lake Half Marathon, which is on September 4th. So that's approximately a week or two. I think it's actually just a week after the Chicago Triathlon. And the third race on this list is Ironman Madison 70.3, which I can't defer that race anymore. I want to do the race because of how much the 70.3 still currently scares me, despite the fact that I did the race in 2019. I was left pretty, like, burnt after that race. I want to do it again. And 2 weeks later, after 70.3 Madison, is the Chicago Marathon. So there's still time, effectively, to get some rest between both races and have my taper after Madison 70.3 kind of rejuvenate, and then get back into speed for the Chicago Marathon. That's another thing that's going to be different, is that it's just going to be a very intense build in like July, August, part of September, and then it's going to kind of taper off, obviously, as we lead into the Chicago Marathon. But like even for these races, I'm still going to do like not necessarily intense training, but moderate to high level training in between, you know, all the races, because I'm not aiming to win any of these races necessarily. I really do want to do them for like the perspective of just being able to put in that work and do the distance for all of them. So that's kind of just the mindset for them. There's no way I'm going to win like any of these 3 races. Maybe the Crystal Lake Half Marathon, if like my training is done really well and I can run like a sub hour 15, hour 20 half marathon, then we're talking. That's like a pretty decent time, and I would feel really good about that marathon or that half marathon result. But again, that's something just to consider as we move forward. So That's two things, of course, moving into the training program. And then three, of course, is the way my training is currently structured. So if you're not following me on Strava, go ahead and do it. It's kind of fun. I post a lot of workout updates because I do a lot of workouts daily, but I digress. The point here is that my weekly mileage buildup has been not necessarily sporadic. It's kind of leaning more towards like that 60, 70, maybe 80 miles per week kind of build. But there was an entire week where I just took entirely off and then just built out of nowhere. So as you could probably see on this graph, there was one week where I run like literally only 7.2 miles. And that was the week that I got my wisdom teeth yanked out and I busted my head open and, I just couldn't do anything per doctor's orders. And then after that, I'm back to running 40 miles a week. Then I run like 50, and then I go back down to 45, 43, and it goes to 53, 50, 54. So now I'm like consistently at about 50 miles a week. But what's happening in the background here is that the peroneal tendon injury that I got shortly after the Chicago Marathon, including like this stress reaction to the fibula, is starting to like ease back in. And like I have obviously a little bit of kinesio tape on my ankle right now, but it's nowhere in like the same level of pain I had last year. Like it's just sore, and it just I'll feel it if I don't stretch properly, and if I stretch my calf a certain way, I'll feel it kind of like tingle in the very low heel area. And like for a while I was worried. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm having an Achilles injury here, because I don't experience anything on like the Achilles tendon ever. I've never had any sort of pain there, and like lo and behold, it's like still in this peroneal tendon area. So the idea here is to essentially start emphasizing the 80-20 rule a lot more often. And it's like something that when I had the injury originally and was doing treadmill workouts, I was a lot more conscious about this. But now that I'm like running outside, I don't think about it nearly as much. Like I look at my average heart rate after a workout and it tells me it's 153 beats per minute, 155. And I'm like, okay, that's close enough to the recommended MAF tone range for me, which is about 151. But like I'm feeling comfortable running at the heart rates and the distances I'm running at now. But that's not to be fooled with like what really needs to be done pen and paper, which is keep it below 151, run easy, keep the easy days easy, keep your fast days fast, and you're going to get the training done right. So obviously when we go through some of my workouts as a result, like this one I'll post here, this track workout I did not too long ago, I kept that one pretty hard, and like I was running, I think 1,200 meter intervals at like 5K pace. I was trying to go at more like 10 to half marathon, but I was feeling good and I pushed it to those higher paces. So I was running like that threshold, pace overall, and it was a good time. And then like the day after that, I kept it nice and easy. The day before that, kept it nice and easy. The long run I had on the weekend with my group run, kept it nice and easy in terms of like keeping the pace below like 8:30 or like 8 minutes per mile, and like the heart rate was low the whole time. So I'm taking steps to effectively get into the 80-20 rule a lot more naturally and more fluidly, so I'm not like constantly thinking about it. Here's another thing that's probably really important to note also, is that this is a complete tangent. For those guys who have Apple Watches, Apple is releasing an update that is going to make the workout interface a lot more friendly, and you're going to be able to see a lot more icons on it. I don't have like the link available to me. If I find it, I'll try to post it here. But long story short, it's going to make some of our like troubles that we've found workarounds for like a thing of the past. So like you'll be able to see your heart rate training. Your watch will now be able to tell you when to like, launch yourself doing intervals during a workout. If you're a triathlete, you can now make it swiftly transition between like swim, bike, run workouts, so you don't have to like stop a workout and then flip the next workout. Like you can do all these things kind of seamlessly. So this is a complete tangent. So good on Apple for releasing this update, which could make our lives for Apple Watch users a little bit easier. So hopefully that can roll over into training like kind of well, but we'll see. So that's another thing, is of course just being more, conscious of the 80-20 rule. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with my marathon training. At the time that this video I think is going to get released, I'm going to be in Colorado for a week just to, just have a family trip, but also do some training in the meantime, because, when you're in elevation, why wouldn't you train, right? So yeah, a lot of the work I'm going to do there is going to basically kickstart my triathlon season, things such as open water swimming, biking in the mountains to get like, the lung capacity starting to open up a little bit more. Basically getting my bike legs moving again because they haven't been moving very frequently, and then just, running in general. So that's the plan now. We're 4 months away from the Chicago Marathon. I'm kind of starting off on the wrong foot here, no pun intended, but I still do want to run a 2:59:59, and I think I have the mindset, the coaching, and just the experience to do it. It's just a case of putting the whole package together and getting it done on race day. So that's why I'm going to leave this video. If you guys have any cool marathon tips or training, or you're going to be training for the Chicago Marathon as well, let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about things. So that's what I'll end this video. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.